Okay, I'm going live on YouTube.
I feel like I work for NASA.
Yeah, I mean, this is my first digital opening. It's very different.
Yeah, welcome.
Let's see who's down there. Just let them in.
Hey, Max, can you come here for 1 sec?
Yep.
Oh, never mind. Okay, I think we're good. Not that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All good.
We're going to start at about 2:35.
Okay. You guys ready to begin?
Sure.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming and joining us on this digital artist talk today. We are Aaron Davis and Maxie Lee, co-organizers of Hall Gallery. Hall Gallery is a financially transparent art gallery with a focus on selling artwork affordably while also experimenting with different ways to make artists money. We do not sell to the extremely wealthy, and we are based in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, across the street from the Home Depot if you live around here. This artist talk is happening in conjunction with our current show of the artists Clovice Holt and Jason Blue Lake Medicine Eagle Martinez. After today, the show is open one more weekend, closing on the 21st of March. Our website is www.hall.gallery, and we are also on Instagram at hall.gallery, which I will post in the chat momentarily. We are also live streaming this talk on YouTube and on our website. And I have just posted the YouTube live streaming link in the chat if for any reason any of you need it or would like to share it. And without further ado, we'll start. When we invited Clovice and Jason to show together, we were drawn to how they both approach contemporary spirituality and related themes, which we will explore in this talk, among other things. So I guess I'd like to open it up and kind of give Clovice and Jason the floor. So we'll start with Clovice. Could you briefly introduce yourself and your practice.
Yeah, thanks for coming, everyone. My name's Clovice. I'm an artist living out here in Brooklyn. And I would say my practice right now is moving into a more cross-disciplinary type of work. I have a photo degree from Georgia State University in Atlanta. And over quarantine, I got a Oculus Quest. It's a VR headset. And I started making things in VR. This piece is one of the things I made.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Jason, would you be able to do the same?
Absolutely. My name is Jason Blue Lake Medicine Eagle Martinez. Recently, that name, for some of you who know me well, has changed from Blue Lake Hawk. I will talk a little bit more about that later, but Blue Lake Hawk happens to be my father's native name. He is Benjamin Blue Lake Hawk Martinez. When I was 19 years old, my father named me Medicine Eagle. Now, he's always said to me that the eagle could fly above the storm. And so I kind of didn't want to take that name. I kind of took his, in a sense, because eagle didn't resonate with me until after 2015-16, when I had brain surgery for a brainstem tumor, which has changed my life incredibly over the years. So just recently, I realized that I had that strength to fly above the storm. So now that Medicine Eagle is something that I have finally taken. And so I think that it's taken all these years to finally go through that life ceremony of becoming the man that they say through the Kiva culture that is my native culture. So that's the big thing with that name. I have a undergraduate degree in painting from Purchase College and a MFA from the University at Albany. I am currently teaching at a private school in upstate New York, so that means I've been in academia most of my life. And I'm super excited about what I do, and I'm super excited to be here with Hall Gallery and you guys. It's been a wonderful experience so far. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you both for that introduction and a little bit of background on what you do. So what we kind of are envisioning here is just to begin a kind of open conversation. So I'll bring up some general questions. I also want to say that if anyone listening who's within the Zoom meeting right now has any questions, please feel free to post those in the chat, and we will hopefully answer them as we move through, and then we'll definitely save a few minutes for questions at the very end. So
hold on, I'm going to interrupt. Clovice or Jason, have you guys prepared? I know we should have talked about this before we're live, but assuming you have prepared like a set talk, do you guys want to do that first before we make it like an open discussion? Or is the open discussion good?
An open discussion is fine, because I believe that will feed some of the things that we're already thinking about. And I'd like that, because whatever resonates really with the viewer, I think is the most important.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't anything prepared that we were skipping. Okay, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
Perfect. Yeah, so I guess I want to start, Clovice. What I find really, really interesting, especially, in kind of getting to know both you and your work before this show, and then like leading up to it, and then the decision to include this really incredible sculpture as your only work within this show, and so something that we really loved and thought was really interesting was that from what we know of your work, this piece seems like a new direction for you. And so could you speak to your choice of creating Thick Lucy, and what experiences you had, and like what was it like to do it?
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of the work that I was making before, again, was photo based, which is just a completely different method of working. I took a sculpture class in university and dropped out of that very fast because I just didn't have the 3D kind of spatial awareness to do that work. But over quarantine, there was just a lot going on. We actually live above a funeral home in Brooklyn. So I'm, working full time and I'm making art. And I'm thinking a lot about the current circumstances, the nature of things. And I just kept thinking about religion. And, there's this massive group of people that are no longer here, and kind of just contemplating that on the daily, coming home from work. I got a little ankle injury and I took off work for 2 weeks. And I said, just to pass time, I'm going to get a virtual reality headset, play some games, relax a little bit. And Adobe and a few other programs have these really great sculpture programs. So there was one called Adobe Medium that I started using. And a lot of the things that I were making were small little vases, little trinkets. And then I just really started thinking about quarantine more and more and more. So one day I was just making things and I started shaping out this humanoid figure and I gave it some wings. And then the story just kind of all came together in that moment. For me, the piece is a kind of queer alternative telling of this little story in the Bible about Lucifer's fall from heaven. In the story, he's a very obnoxious, haughty character who's trying to take power. And God's kind of like, you know what? No, that's not going to work. You're banished. And for me, growing up Catholic in Southern California, there were just a lot of oppressive things that I'm noticing now that I'm older. So I wanted to make this piece. I wanted to put a queer spin on it and kind of use that just as a coping mechanism for my relationship with religion in general, but also just something to do and make to make the days go by a little faster. So for me, the sculpture, it's really goofy aesthetically. It's very de-skilled aesthetically. It reminds me of so many things from childhood, like the show Gumby. There's a Red Devil in Cow and Chicken, which is the kids show that used to come on Cartoon Network, but the character would disappear with this huge butt. And it was a kid's show, and I was always so confused. So like as a young person who's also figuring out sexuality and all these things, this Red Devil character with this huge butt is just always on TV. Very confusing in general. So I think there are a lot of things I notice about the sculpture, even still when I look at it, where I'm like, you know what? I'm probably pulling at things subconsciously.
Wow, that's so interesting. Yeah, I mean, I love, I think like some, especially the feature, like, like the really big butt, like I also thought of Cow and Chicken and like these other kind of like, or like Ren and Stimpy, right? This kind of, these moments where you're looking at clearly a children's cartoon. I mean, it was like on a children's network.
For sure.
And yet there's like these really strange, kind of like I don't know, like to me, not kid-like themes, but then it kind of bleeds into this whole other realm of like, I don't know, humor and like relating to the body that I think a lot of those shows kind of touched on. So I just think that's like a really amazing part of this piece.
Yeah, Ren and Stimpy is a show that I think about that's super visceral. They would do these really great close-up shots of like noses with like really detailed shots of like nose hair and pimples and boogers. And
yeah,
it was a kid's show, but also I think a lot of the time children aren't given the what's the word? They're not giving the like respect as being actual people. Kids are also dealing with everything that adults are dealing with, pertaining to like an emotional spectrum. So I also was just watching WandaVision recently, and you were talking about Ren and Stimpy, who are, it's a cartoon for children, but you have a lot of these adult creators that are focused on making these universes. And so video games really interest me for that same reason. You have all these companies that are making characters and storylines and plots, and cinema is the same way, where you're really building a universe. And so I have some more sculpture that I'm making. And I kind of like the idea of that, creating these little fictional worlds.
Yeah, that's actually, I'm really glad you brought that up because it kind of, just as a follow-up question, I mean, do you see yourself like continuing to work in VR? And like, you know, I guess the bottom line question is for me would be like, do you envision that being like a staple of your practice now? And then do you think about this piece as kind of a standalone, or are you working on like more to add to this world?
Yeah, so I'm working on other pieces in VR. I'm also just thinking a lot about like Beeple crap and this NFT craze and this digital art and all these articles about how digital art is, you know, the next period of art. And it's VR just seems like such a great tool to combine digital software and art making. So I'm excited about it. I'm excited to also just see, you know, in a few years how it will change aesthetically, how my craftsmanship will get better. This was the first time I've ever made anything this big. This was the first time working with 3D print, which is a PLA plastic. It's very fragile, and making this was awful. It was like the craziest workflow I've ever had. It was huge, it was obnoxious, but it came out and I'm so excited to see it as one piece. But also I just feel more prepared in making the next ones.
Wow, yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. So interesting. Cool. Well, let's keep going here. Let's open this up. I got some questions for Jason too. Jason, let me just get my ducks together here. Hold on one second. Okay. Jason, your work, it often combines many different spiritual and pop culture themes. Could you speak to what choices or decisions you make when you're deciding how to combine different symbols in your work?
Yes, absolutely. I feel like the first thing that I should mention is the archetypal figures, and what they've meant historically, mythologically, psychologically, really going into like Jungian's idea of the archetype and what that means for each one of us psychologically. And so I try to have fun with utilizing popular culture characters like Looney Tunes, things like that, you know, elements that we might be more familiar with, to play with that idea of the familiarity within the psychology of the viewer. Because really that sort of softens the blow for some of the ideas or concepts that are behind my work. I really see art as a cathartic element, and I see that in my students too, as young as pre-K. As some of you know, I teach pre-K through 12 art, and for me, a lot of the things that I see them come out with emotionally in the classroom, or the things that they're inspired by, become imbued in my own work. They become part of it, almost like, you know, John Michael Basquiat worked with children. And I've been working with kids since I was at Purchase. I worked with Tim Rollins in the KOS for a little while. And I got to work with a lot of really different artists while I was there. But that was one of the most, like, I guess, sort of influential experiences for me, was working with them, because they were inner city kids. You know, and a lot of them had really rough families. A lot of them were dealing with a lot of issues. So I saw a lot of spirituality in their lives, and that's kind of been, you know, something that I'm working with for myself. I mean, I really think about life as a progress, a progression of growth, and I think, you know, like I spoke to earlier, since the tumor, there's been more of that. Since I was a young child, I was really interested in spirituality and all forms of religion, anything that stood out to me as something that was a raw essence of who we are as humans. And that's what I'm trying to get at with each one of these pieces. And the pieces themselves I see them not as just individual, but I see them, if you could piece them together, or if you could make something linear like a book, the story would continue itself. Like, so for example, the characters, there's one that appears over and over again, and his name is One. Now, One is the little sphere with the wings, and usually you see two of his wings. I would imagine that he has six, like a traditional Judeo-Christian seraphim angel. They're said to have six wings. They're said to guard the throne of God. And so One really came out of this sort of archetype of the protector in my life. Something where I could tangibly put my mind, my spirit, my psyche into an idea of God or a protector. Now, years down the line, as I continued to use this archetype within my work, I started to get into yoga, and I started to get into different forms of yoga and studying a lot about the East, studying Tantra, which I still practice in my life along with my native ways. But within a form of Hinduism, specifically those who are devotees to Krishna, they have this entity which is the divine creator of the universe named Jagannath. Now, Jagannatha, or the Jagannath family, who he appears with his female counterpart and their child, they're spheres. They're spherical elements with big circular eyes that just totally resonated to me because, again, the article that I sent you earlier, our Pueblo clan or our Pueblo cult of the Kosari, Kachina, we during ceremony wear big circles around our eyes and our mouth. Now, this is a ceremonial mask that I had made that is to represent the Kosari Kachina. Okay, now I had an opening where my beautiful daughter wore this mostly the whole time and followed me around as that alternate protective spirit. So if I could say that One is in a physicality, it would be something like this, where a spirit mask, if someone puts it on, they become that spirit. Almost like in Haitian voodoo or African voodoo, where the shaman, the medicine man becomes the embodiment of what we cannot see. It becomes that element of God. So that's where that alternate reality of God comes into my work. And that's where the archetypes, like cartoons, they become those, unseen elemental protectors around us, like angels or ascended beings. I too was raised Catholic on my mother's side. They're Scotch Irish and wonderful group of people. And I went to Catholic school for quite a period of time. And my grandmother was a devout Catholic. I had a lot of that in my life too. I had a lot of dealing with what are the most important things about these ceremonies, but what are the elements of guilt that I need to not hold on to, the elements of dogma that I need to let go and search for my own path in spirituality and basically rooting my own path in the catharsis of healing as a human, not just for myself, but for the human race in general, and as a teacher, because I have to be that healer every day. So that's really the practicality of shamanism in my life, is being that catalyst for my students. I know I have a couple here today, very beloved students. And, I know that I've been that for them, and it's rewarding. It's the most rewarding thing in the world. And I wouldn't give it up for anything. So I think that's it. I'm going to be done rambling for a second. Thank you.
That was great.
Can I jump in with one question?
Sure.
So you were speaking specifically about things that show up in your work, and I think I tried to locate them while you were talking about it, but excellent. And so I'm just wondering,
there it is.
There, very nice.
And
so I'm just wondering what other symbols from your native heritage you might be able to touch on, because you did talk about, you sent us an article about Pueblo clowns, and I see some of the visual motifs there. So I'm wondering if you can talk more about that.
Yeah, sure, I'd love to. So the Pueblo clown on my native side, okay, I belong to a Kachina clan or a Kachina cult. which we represent what is called the Kosari clown, or the Hano clown in some tribes, the Kosa clown in others. There are mud dabber clowns in other tribes, but this is for the Pueblo clans. And so we are the Tiowa clan, and we are a Kiva clan. And the Kiva is a sacred space where we go to practice medicine and go to connect with the spirits in general. So for example, in the piece that we're looking at right now, the black and white within that piece represents the dualities of mankind. And so for the Kosari clown paints himself in black and white ash. And those rings represent the balance in life. So the Kosari is not just the healer or the medicine man, but also the clown, the sacred in the profane, if you will. There is always profanity in the sacred. There is always sacred in the profanity. It's a balance, almost like the yin and the yang, that kind of symbol. So when I use that stark contrast within my work, it's to represent the balance that's going on in the world around me, but also within my own, methodology of catharsis, healing, magic that comes through the work. Like if I'm like a piece like this, when I paint this piece, I'm thinking of a lot of different situations in the world, in my own life, people that I love, and I'm utilizing those things and I'm connecting with them. And I'm sending them healing, I'm sending them love, I'm sending them vibrations to continue on to understand their own spiritual journey. Now, the Kosari clown is a clown. And so that's why there are robot representatives. That's why God's hand is coming out of the cloud with a finger like Monty Python, which was an example that really influenced me in life. There are elements of comedy in each one of these pieces. So where the clown is sort of terrified about the situation going on around him there, and that sort of represents me. And this piece was, thinking about like the destruction of COVID. I did this piece, and all these tendrils are kind of like viral pieces battling with T cells, but yet on another side, it's sort of like, this devastation that's going on with like right and left in our country. So I think a lot about politics and how we have to sort of come to the center and stop allowing this pendulum to swing so far, because if we do, we will be so far off balance. So if we could come together and start to see elements where we all agree, where we all are human, maybe we will be able to change the world. But until then, we will only see these stark contrasts. So for example, this guy here that you're pointing at right now, he's of course still the clown. He's sitting on the ladder of the Kiva right there. But he also represents me. He's got an Amoebix t-shirt on, which is a crustcore punk rock band. And I love that band. So I sort of put elements of that on the t-shirt. So there's popular culture imbued into this sort of spiritual concept that's almost hidden from a lot of the world, and that's something that, remains slightly esoteric. But I want the viewer to be able to pull their own emotion into this piece. And so adding the clouds, the connections of the beads being prayers. People think about those things, even in Catholicism, for example, like, the rosary, but the rosary also translates, like in this piece, to Hinduism, where each bead itself, and the Hindu word, or the Sanskrit word, is bija, and bija means prayer. So the mala, for example, and I wear malas on my wrist and around my neck, these rudra seeds, each one of them represents a prayer. So in wearing that, I want to wear that in my art too. So a lot of my figures, they wear these beads. So does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was really incredible context. So while you were talking, Jason, you brought up COVID. So I just kind of wanted to ask you both if you could speak to kind of what your practice has been like this past year or so. Basically, all of this work, or most of it at least, was created either 2020 or 2021. So yeah, could you both just kind of speak to what that was like, how it influenced your practice? Did it change your practice? You know, how has the events of the last year affected you?
Yeah, I think for me, during this time I've been extremely fortunate um, to have a job, still get money, and this piece, I feel like I haven't shown work in New York, and this was kind of like a make or break moment for me, me being in my own head. So I was like, you know what, I can throw some money and get this piece printed, and it's gonna cost a little bit, but when after I made it, it just felt really good. And a good feeling was something that I really needed um, throughout this time. Also, I got a studio space. I had a place to go after work that wasn't just my house, to not only make art, but just have time to myself and, work through things. And again, I live above a funeral home, so at the beginning of it, it was just wild. You have truckloads of just people, and it really was it was really hitting me because I just kept thinking these people aren't here anymore, and no one really knows what happens. That's really frightening. So, I'm having my existential thoughts creep up on me at 3 a.m. in the morning before work, and I was just thinking more and more about religion. So I wanted to make this piece. Um, yeah, making this piece has been very good. Working in VR has been very good, but also I think there's just something about physically working. Again, the photography process for me when I used to work in the dark room, it was very physical. But outside of the dark room, everything's pretty digital. So being able to physically paint, sand, work with my hands, it's been a really nice experience just to think about your physical body during this time. It's been really cool for me.
That's awesome. And just to follow up, thinking about your practice, or just as it relates to making this piece and your more recent stuff, do you think that that using VR and like the kind of discoveries you made with like the new software and things like that, do you think that was in part because of the restrictions of the pandemic and just how things were feeling psychologically?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff in the beginning was just sold out. I would have to buy PPE equipment for like my job and things like that. So I don't even know if I would have access to, I wouldn't even know what to make a sculpture out of really, besides like clay. So just thinking of like supply chain wise, what that looks like in the beginning of COVID, it was kind of a little questionable. I knew that if I could make this digitally, I could have the file. And if I wanted to make it, a year from now, 2 years from now, I could go ahead and do that, which is just so great. It's just like, you don't have to worry about that when it comes to digital stuff. Of course, it's real now. I have to store it somewhere. I have to care for it somehow, but it's just amazing that like we can make these things in computers and like print them out now. The technology is just so amazing to me. Also, just another note. When I think about technology and the advancements that we're having, I was born in '91 and like we didn't have. I remember my mom having a laptop when I was like 10 and thinking, oh, this is like the coolest thing. I also remember like using a rotary phone at my grandma's house when I was younger, using a typewriter, and now we just have full blown virtual reality headsets. That's really wild to me. And it really makes me think about religion and technology and their relationship. It's harder for me now to kind of believe in like a ever present deity, singular deity that is like Catholic God that I grew up with, when I can download like a terabyte of pornography or order sushi for my friend in Japan using an app. Like it's crazy to me. It's hard for me to really believe these things. The faster and faster technology is growing.
Totally. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. No. That was just so. I mean, I think that something that I really, really love about just the piece in general is like you said. I mean, just I think that there's a lot to be said about exploring a new medium for like maybe not even the first time or the first time possibly, and the kind of I don't know, there's like a freedom with it, right? Like it just in exploring a new way of making something. And so I don't know, I just see that freedom in this piece, and it makes it so compelling to me. So yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Jason, how has the past year been for you? How has it affected your work? Yeah.
Okay, so let me begin by saying that a couple of my advanced studio students on Friday mentioned to me that Friday was the anniversary of our first quarantine day because we were in quarantine last year. We left school, and then we were at school online for the rest of the year last year. So during that period of time, like struggling to come up with a way to continue, my lessons digitally, and then add some new things like digital art, vector, modeling in 3D, things like that for the kids. Like I was so isolated here, and it felt really isolating on the computer all the time that I utilized any free time to just dive into my artwork. So my artwork has always been kind of accelerated because I don't really think a lot about it being so precious that I make changes. A lot of times I'll go in immediately with a Malto acrylic pen and do my outlining right on a board or a piece of paper. There's a lot of stream of consciousness involved. I like the folkiness of working quickly and not thinking about it having to be perfect. Mistakes are always welcome. If coffee spills on a piece, it stays there. So I guess being at home and things like that happening, like coffee spilling on work or whatever, has freed me up even more. And it's given me this sort of drive to continue to just make this stream of consciousness work almost like on a conveyor belt, really. And I'm really enjoying that because the story, continues, and I'm not getting frustrated with, one piece where, during COVID, I started working on like 7 pieces at once and then just adding color here, doing that, adding this element. Oh, this will work here, and then that's how this show sort of came into being. And that's why all the work that's showing there right now, first off, is a little bit smaller than some of my other works. But that's how I was able to just crank those out. And a lot of them say 2021, 2020, because they were really completed just before this show, and visual art for me is a lifesaver. And I mean, and I'm sure it is for many of us on here, it's cathartic and healing and helps to pull us through this weird plague that we're going through. So.
Yeah, and just thinking more about your work, I mean, one of my favorite things about the pieces that we have in this show, as well as just your work in general, is the immense level of detail, right? I mean, Max is kind of giving us a really excellent view of some of that here, but I mean, I feel like with every single work that we have on the wall here, like, I can kind of glance at it or get like an overall view, and I will see things and kind of and understand a bunch of references. But then just as you can see, right, like the more you close in and zoom in on these different things, I mean, there's just so much going on. Like, what does detail? Clearly you use detail in a really effective way in your work. Could you just speak a little bit to like what detail means to you? Like why do you think this is the strategy that you take to kind of explore these themes?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of different avenues. So let me go back to my younger years. And as a kid in college, making posters for different punk rock bands, thinking about like quick methods of shading. And even before that, I fell in love with Philip Guston and some of his hatch work in his paintings. The Chicago School of New Imagist is also a really big influence in my life. Peter Saul, some of those works. And there's something about that sort of, I don't know, the raw method of art making that really spoke to me. I really love the artwork of children. I really love outsider art. I love Jean Dubuffet. I love the roughness of his work. And those were the things that brought me to studying forms of hatching and forms of stippling. And I love teaching that to my students now. But in my own process, it's sort of developed this really wonderful meditative process where each one of the stipple lines has become the bija. Each one of those has become the prayer. Each one of those is a meditation. So now as I work on the piece, I can say, I am safe. I am healthy. I am healed. I am loved. I am all of those things because I feel as I speak that, it raises that vibration. And so if you look closely into some of the pieces, I'll hatch with the word love. I'll hatch with the word hope. Hatch with the word peace so that it becomes imbued in the work, like the work of other indigenous people. And that's what my work is about. And that's why when we came together for the show, I said all of my works are going to be low priced. I want them to be available to people who want them, not just the wealthy, not just people who collect art, but I want them there as something that gives hope to humanity in general. So again, it's nice that you see that in the work because that's what's going on. There's this quick form of hatching hope, peace, love, and this rapid, repetitive motion of prayer, like a mantra, like saying the mantra or saying, Ma Durga, Ma Durga, Ma Durga, Kali Ma over and over again, or some of the Pueblo chants. It's that being imbued into the work.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Sure.
Well, thank you guys. This has been really, really, really incredible. Max, do you have any follow-ups that we should kind of think about as we move towards the end here?
No, I think Jason and Clovice, if you're open to it, we can have people in the meeting ask questions.
Yeah, that would be great.
For sure.
I think we can keep it at an hour, so we have about 15 minutes left. So Aaron, I can't see from the phone, but for those of you who are familiar with the raise hand feature and have a question, we encourage the raise hand feature. If you can't locate the raise hand feature on Zoom, you can turn your video on and literally raise your hand, and Aaron will keep an eye out. So if anybody has any questions, now's your time.
Also, please feel free to post in the chat too.
Also totally chill if there aren't any.
Yeah, I just want to say in general, like I'm Jason, I'm just like in awe again about the detail in the work. When we were installing the show, all of your stuff was already up, and I was just like, holy shit, like this line work is intense. And as someone who like dreads precision line work and detail in drawing when I draw, I was just like, oh, this is like wild. Even in my piece for VR, it was really hard for me to pick what was going to have detail since the object is just such a kind of a generic humanoid figure. So yeah, kudos to you for that for sure.
Thank you, sir. I really appreciate it.
We have a question, sorry, from Jenny is raising their hand.
Perfect. Jenny, go ahead.
I okay, so full disclosure, I'm Max's mom, and I was gonna not jump in, but I just was so moved by both of you and what you shared about your work, and I just needed to say thank you for that and for the work that you're doing. I'm stunned by all of it. And Jason, I grew up in New Mexico and certainly lived in awe of the Pueblo culture around me. And I'm also a counselor. So when you talked about Jungian archetypes, I just was like moved even deeper by your work. And so, and Clovice, I'm amazed by this piece is like, I just, every time the camera went back around to it, it's amazing. And thank you for sharing yourself through that.
Oh, that's so nice. I think me and Jason both kind of have this goal that people look at our work, and every artist I hope feels this way. You look at the work, and as an audience member, you bring your own thoughts and experience into it, and you just grab whatever you need to grab from it. That's just a really important aspect for both of us, I think.
I agree. Yeah, and congratulations, Clovice, on this undertaking. I think it's fantastic that you were able to accomplish this. Yeah, as your first giant didactic sculpture, it's pretty phenomenal. So, kudos.
Totally.
Thank you. Julia has a question too.
Yeah, Julia, go ahead. Oh, hold on one second, Julia. I'm gonna, I think you have to unmute yourself.
Oh,
there we go.
Do either of you think that a specific aspect or style of your work has changed in any dramatic ways because of COVID, or maybe like your mindset towards your artistry or the way you do what you do?
I would say for me, a lot of my work is kind of a response to these traumatic things that I've kind of went through. I have a lot of pets that have passed away, and I've kind of done some self-ritual work. I scanned their ashes. I made a scan of my cat with some flowers that I had, and these little rituals for me, this is all pre-COVID, were really important ways for me to cope with the death of a loved one, of something that you really care about. For me, making the sculpture is in the similar thought process, but physically they're just very different works. So I think it's more of the same for me. Fortunately or unfortunately, there's always this cloud of existential fear, but you got to keep going. What can you do?
Yeah.
I want to branch off that maybe a little and just say I really appreciate how amorphous that form is. Like, I really just love looking at it, especially when someone brought up Gumby. I was not in like any type of way like with that, but I was like, this is just such a really cool like sculpture. And so you designed it like with CAD or?
No, so it's even simpler because I'm dumb and don't know CAD. I'm learning Blender and it's extremely hard. So the VR headset, you put it on, you have these handles, and you're literally like clicking this trigger, and then it's like representational clay comes out. So you're doing this movement, you're adding things, you're cutting things, and it's just it's crazy. You're just like sitting in your room by yourself with a headset on. Like, my friend walked in one day and is just like, what are you doing? And I'm like, just leave me alone. I'm making art right now.
Well, I love that. And I think that that's a really awesome new method of art making, especially because it is a more expensive method of doing it, but doing it like
Sure.
with pink foam or like something like that is also such a task. So I think it's really cool that that is how this was made, because I would have approached this and been like, oh, this is totally some type of like plaster or something like that. And so I
That
really
was one of
appreciate that it's like more than that, you know.
that was one of the things too. I wasn't sure exactly what the 3D model would be physically. I just knew that it would be a print, but actually it's filled with an expandable foam, which was a disaster because I don't work with foam. My new studio table was just ruined with foam everywhere. It was really a process of getting a finished piece. And we got there, but man, it was wild.
A piece with a story is always great. And I
For
think
sure.
that also like with, I'm one of Jason's former students, but I
Mm.
think it's really great that you guys have been like paired together for this exhibition.
Yeah,
'Cause
I
yeah,
think
you guys
there are a
both
lot of
think a lot
common
about
themes.
life, death, what it all means and everything in between, you know.
And then we just add some Gumby and some Looney Tunes, and yeah, we get it.
That's right. And for me, Julia, who's one of my old students as well, you know, my work has changed a bit in the fact that, you know, I've always tried to make work that didn't have a lot of pretense. But at this point, really, I'm heavily thinking about that hatching, that prayerful sort of work that goes into each piece to sort of make each piece a prayer for society. So as I've had to deal with COVID and as I've had to make art through times of isolation, through times of pain, through times of anxiety, I've utilized that method and it's become stronger and stronger through all of this because it's a way for me to share my intentions with the world. So really, in short, that's how my work has changed. So.
Thank you both. We have a question in the chat from Pastiche that I will read. Jason mentioned access to the artwork, and I'm curious about the relationship to religious iconography and how it spreads. Could you both discuss how these symbols have spread? So maybe Jason, if you want to go first.
Sure. Let me start with something that's not so seen as religious in itself. There's a piece that has the guitarist from a band called Gorgoroth, which is a black metal band. And so years ago, I sort of started to become more fascinated with black metal again. As a youth, of course, I remember how dangerous they were during the 90s when I was a teenager. There were all the church burnings in Norway, and they were taking back their Viking roots, their pagan roots. And I thought that that was pretty interesting in relationship to my culture as a Native American and how the Spanish, they came up from South America through Mexico and then sort of forced us all to become Catholics or die, planting churches on our reservations and things like that. So this guitarist from Gorgoroth is, of course, wearing corpse paint, as many of you will know. The corpse paint sort of began with bands like Kiss, Alice Cooper, and King Diamond. But there was the singer for a band named Mayhem in 92 that sort of made that popular. And his name was Dead. And he was like a forerunner of black metal. And he would paint his face like this. And it reminded me so much of the clown, the clown on the Pueblo, the Kosari clown that is my cult or my clan, that, you know, it really resonated with me. It resonated not only as this sort of reclamation of pagan spirituality over Catholic dogma, but also I named this piece, Out of Darkness Comes Great Light. And I believe that. I believe that there's this sense of balance in the world where there's nothing that's purely evil and there's nothing that's purely good. There is always something in the dark and there's always, you know, light. That's, you know, I mean, so they work together. It is a balance. And so as far as my native religion, that's sort of resonated with me. And then also other tribes that adorn themselves in makeup and things like that. And speaking to the black and white, the dualist nature of, you know, the yin and the yang, that balance, you know, and so that's where religion really sort of appears in my work right now. I mean, there's some Eastern elements as well, and some other mythologically, relevant characters. But I think that's the biggest exploration for me at the moment, is just balance. Because like I said earlier, along with my native practice of giving honor to the earth and all of the elements, elemental ritual, elemental magic, I am studying tantric yoga, which is the earliest before Hinduism existed, which focuses on mankind as a god, that we are imbued with that power. And there's an element of the Christian scriptures that speaks to that, that many people don't know about. And if you look it up in John, and I don't know the exact number of the scripture, but Yeshua said that you are all gods. Didn't I say that you are all gods? Now that is a thing that a lot of people like to hide within the church, but Yeshua did say it, and it did get stuck in the Gospel of John. So that's kind of really interesting to me in relationship to my native culture and to Tantra, because those things are that we are one with the Creator, that the Creator is in us and in everything around us, that not only things that we think are alive, but everything is alive. The atom structure of everything around us, but rocks are alive. Rocks hold memory. So that's kind of the path that I'm on right now. And so that's where all of these works that are currently in the show, they speak to those elements of religion, I guess, or spirituality.
Thank you.
Sure.
Clovice, maybe to close us out, you could also talk about how the spread of religious iconography.
Yeah, so Pasish says the relationship to religious iconography and how it spreads. For me, again, this kind of goes back to technology. When I play a game called League of Legends, which at one point was the biggest multiplayer game in the world, that's a really powerful thing. You had people, gathering for religious sects and going to church and having these organizations of common ground to have common morals and do these things. And religion has been used as brute force for powerful people to get things that they want. But I think about religion so much when I'm playing League of Legends. There's just millions of people putting their time and energy into this team-based game. And so the more technology happens, we're seeing, Kylie Jenner with millions of followers on Instagram. We're seeing Facebook CEOs and these tech companies holding so much real money and real power that I really question, at least in the US, how religion can keep up with those type of things. It's a very US Western kind of things. It's hard for me to really think about religion other than a time when I'm having like an existential crisis. I'm too busy with my smartphone and TikTok and Instagram to even be bothered by it otherwise. So tangling it all together is really complicated, but I'm curious to see, what happens.
Totally. Thank you. And I noticed we have one other question in the chat, and it's actually for Jason. Seeing the diversity and speaking about a coffee stain kind of becoming part of your art or influencing your work, is there an artist tool that is a must-have for you in your studio or in your classroom?
Yeah, I feel like pens, wonderful pens. Pens are important, and I feel like the most powerful tools. I have a couple right here, and I mean I'm not sponsored, so but they're these One for All Malto acrylic pens. Now, the wonderful thing about these is they come with different nibs, fine point nibs, but the nibs can be taken out and they're refillable with acrylic paint. And so these work on most surfaces. I got really into working with Malto and Montana as a younger artist when I was at Purchase, because I did a lot of street art. And so working with different inks, working with creating my own inks when I was young, inks that would last on glass and on metal and on brick, you know, for certain uses. Those things were really important to me. So yeah, I mean, having good pens, I think that's really important. I think it's good to have those in my classroom. Now, to elaborate on that, you know, I fortunately work for a school that sort of supplies me with the things that I need. I have a great headmaster who I love working for so much, and he appreciates the arts, he appreciates what I do, and he allows me to just buy supplies where a lot of public school teachers, they don't get that opportunity. So my advanced studio is currently working with acrylic inks. They're working with steel nib pens and brushes. And then, you know, again, when I buy colored pencils, the students always use Prismacolors. They don't use anything less than that. Markers, same idea, you know, so the most expensive markers. So again, I think that materials are really important. If you start kids off with Crayola, they're not going to gain a joy for art. They're going to be like, this doesn't work, you know, and I don't want my kids to feel like that. So even when I'm visiting like second grade, I mean, they're using Prismacolor pencils and they're learning how to do value and blend. So yeah, so definitely supplies are super important. Thank you for whoever.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jason. And just one more follow-up question also from Adina. Is there a piece shown today that you are most proud of or that is inspiring you towards the next piece you will create?
Yeah, if you could go around to the piece with the bunny, Max, can you go around to that piece there? That piece is about spiritual growth, and that piece is about a dear friend, and that friend is there in that piece. And that is a piece about not only my growth, but my growth in seeing that growth along with that person and of course other friends, but it specifically relates to that person. And that would be the piece that I'm most proud of in this show at this point.
Okay, amazing. Well, if no one else has any questions, I think that feels like a good spot for us to close. I just want to give the most giant thank you to both Clovice and Jason for taking the time to share their work and their thoughts with us today, as well as everyone who is either in the Zoom meeting with us right now or tuning in on our website or YouTube. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Again, my name is Aaron Davis. The other person running the view cam is Maxie Lee. We organize Hall Gallery, and this show will be up one more weekend. So please, if you live in the area, feel free to drop by. In addition to this incredible work, there are free snacks, drinks, masks, hand sanitizer in the gallery for any visitors who would like to join us. And yeah, I think with that we're gonna close out. But thank you all again for coming, and you know, we hope to see you and keep doing things throughout the year.
And thank you again, Max and Aaron. I think me and Jason both agree that y'all have been so wonderful to work with, and this has been like the easiest, breeziest install communication for a show that I've been in. So it's really appreciated.
That means
so much.
literally everything. That's what it's all about. Thank you, Clovice.
Yeah.
You know, I've worked with galleries. I've worked all over this country. I mean, I've worked for museums. I've worked in San Francisco, you know, with pop surrealists, you know, galleries out there. And, you know, there's some big heads in the art world, but you guys are so down to earth. You know, you guys are my people for sure. And I'm super thankful for who you are as people and gallerists. And I just hope that you continue to grow and be successful with every show that you do, because this has been amazing. So thank you so much. Peace, brothers.
That is
thank you both of you.
That is truly so. Yeah, thank you. That means the world, and we hope to continue doing things. And yes, you are also our people. Thank you for all that you do and the incredible work that you make, and just being yourselves. Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to close this meeting, but thanks again, everyone. Have a great rest of your Sunday.
All right, keep it real, everybody.